Hello, I'm Michael Marsh. Welcome to the program dedicated to reestablishing constitutional government, first in Oregon and then in the United States. In order to have a constitutional government, it's never been abolished, either in the state of Oregon or the U.S. Constitution. They're still in the book, but we need people that are in office that actually believe. And that's the purpose of this show. Today, my guest is Mike Neerman, who is State Representative, House District 23, which covers Dallas and a little bit of Benton County and some of Yamhill County.
Yep, a little bit of Marion County, too.
And a little bit of Marion County. And Mike is involved in several initiative petitions, one of which is a referendum, and then a couple of initiatives. We'll start with the referendum because that's the time-sensitive one. Tell us about what that initiative is and what it does. What's the purpose of it?
Sure. And so in the last session, in the 2017 session, the legislature passed Senate Bill 719, which established an extreme risk protection order, which means that if a family member or a police officer suspects that a person who owns firearms is going to be a danger to themselves or others, they can go to a judge, and the judge may issue an extreme risk protection order, which is that will require that person to turn all their guns in. So that's kind of the basics of how the act works there. So
and what if you have relatives that don't like you?
Yeah, that could be the problem. So, and what's kind of concerning to me is not so much just the relatives, but one of them says intimate partner, and so then you get the situation of the disgruntled ex-girlfriend or something like that, who's going to decide that she's going to wreck hunting season for you this year, and so it's just worrisome. It kind of is a little bit weak on due process. So,
and we have both the referendum and the initiative process. Maybe you should explain what the difference is.
Sure. So, Oregon's kind of a unique state in that the citizens of the state of Oregon have the right to veto any act of the legislature. So, within 90 days of the legislature adjourning, you can do an initiative or a referendum petition there, and you need right now you need 58,000 signatures. It's based on a formula about how many people voted for governor in the last gubernatorial election. But right now it's about 58,000 signatures you need, and you can put on the ballot a yes or no veto of any act of the legislature, with a little asterisk that it can't have an emergency clause on it. If it's an emergency clause, it goes into effect right away, and then you'd have to use an initiative to repeal it. The last time that Oregon did a referendum successfully was actually in 2014. I was involved in that one too, and that was when the legislature passed a law requiring the DMV to issue driver cards to people who couldn't prove they were in the country legally. And so we got out the clipboards and put that one on the ballot, and the citizens of the state of Oregon voted almost 2-1 to repeal that act of the legislature.
Yeah. Now, you said 9 days. That's from when the governor signs the bill?
No, actually, so and there's a little bit of trickery going on here. So the clock starts on the referendum process when the legislature adjourns. So that's going back all the way, I forget the exact day, but back to early July is when the legislature adjourned. That's when the clock starts. But you can't start collecting signatures until it becomes an act of the legislature, and that's when the governor signs it. So you can't start until the governor signs it. It works the opposite way in your favor sometimes too. So like for instance, Representative Julie Parrish out of West Linn got a referendum going, and she actually got a several-day early start because the governor signed signed the bill before the legislature adjourned, so she could actually start. She got more than the 90 days, and that was the case also with what we now know as Measure 88 with 2 years ago or 4 years ago now, almost now, with the driver cards for illegal aliens. 3 years ago. That one, the governor signed that on May 1st. He wanted to sign it on May Day and kind of make a little ceremony out of it. And so we had a couple extra months to gather signatures there in addition to the 90 days. But that's when the clock starts then, is when the legislature adjourns. It's 90 days from that. That's the time you have to turn those in. So that'll be, I think it's October 4th that we have to turn those in. And in our case, with the extreme risk protection order, the governor sat on the bill for quite several weeks after the adjournment of the legislative session, and that
Probably knew there was going to be a challenge.
or probably suspected there was going to be one. Yeah, another thing that happened was that wasn't the original bill that had the extreme risk protection order. The extreme risk protection order was a different bill, and Senator Przansky made a procedural error in his committee, and so the bill died in his committee. So they had to go get another bill and amend everything out of the bill and put the extreme risk protection order language in the bill. That's a process known as gut and stuff. Yeah, so they had to gut and stuff a bill, whatever. And the bill they gut and stuffed didn't have a emergency clause on it, so that's what gives us the ability to do a referendum. But I'll tell you, Mike, it's going to be a tough road. We have less than 40 days left to gather signatures, and we need probably about 60,000 signatures, and so that's about 1,500 signatures a day, every day of the week, holidays, Sundays, everything. And so it's just going to be a tough for us to make it. But we'll see. We got quite a big grassroots effort, and my wife won't go out and get the mail anymore because she says it's too heavy for her to carry in the house. So at least for that point, we're doing okay on that. But it's a big uphill battle.
Yeah. So, do you have an idea of where you're at on it?
No, so I've spent the last week and a half at least working at the state fair and trying to gather signatures on a bunch of different initiatives, including that one at the state fair. So that's kind of slowed me down as far as being the kind of the administrator of the effort to repeal the Senate Bill 719. So I just don't have any idea what the numbers where we're at yet. So it's early still too. Yeah. We're early on in the process, so we're just right now trying to get traction where we're at.
Well, I did sign that initiative.
Good, thank you.
At the state fair the day I was there.
Thank you. Mm.
I signed a few other initiatives that you were involved in.
So if people want to sign that one, if the people want to get involved, we need people to, now you can go to a website and download a single signer sheet and print it out and sign it and then mail it in. So people can do that.
Where would they?
So if they go to our website, it's www.repeal719.com, and if people go there, they can download a petition and sign it and mail one in there. So it's www.repeal719.com. And they can donate to our cause there. We've got an online donation thing, and we're looking for volunteers to help. So anybody that wants to help with that, we'd appreciate the effort on that.
Yeah. One of the other ones that I've signed, one of them, I understand you're trying to make it so that only U.S. citizens can be registered to vote here.
Right. So in Oregon, so right now if you look at like a Oregon voter registration card, it says on it, are you a citizen of the United States of America? And it's got a yes or no bubble on there. And so that's the only kind of checking that there is, and there's no checking that's done on that. That's just kind of on the honor system there. So that's not really a very strong system there. So what we want to do is just kind of a one-time deal, is over a 2-year period expire all voter registrations and then have people re-register to vote just one time, not every time or anything like that. And when they do that, bring the proof of U.S. citizenship. So that would be a birth certificate or a passport, or there's a whole list of documents. I think they're similar to the ones that the DMV requires. But and have people prove citizenship to register to vote there. We talk a lot in Oregon about our people criticize the vote by mail system, and I like to take it apart and say we have a vote by mail system, and then we have a registration system, registration by internet, registration by anonymous card that you fill out and registration by DMV. And so I like to look at those systems separately. So I'm not such a critic of the vote by mail part of the system there. It's the registration part that I think has some serious issues there. So I think that for anybody to do any kind of large-scale fraud with vote by mail, that's going to be hard because they do check every signature when the ballots come in. So it'd be possible for someone to, on a very limited 1 or 2 basis or whatever, you know, vote for their grandmother who's 97 years old, get her to sign it, and then, you know, that kind of stuff. But not on any large scale way. I think it'd be very difficult to cheat in a large scale way. But with the voter registration system, I think that leaves us with quite a few holes. And so I think that would be a welcome change, is to just say once we're just going to clean up our voter rolls that way.
Yeah, I was very unhappy when they decided to automatically register people at the DMV. I assume you voted against that.
I think that was before my time. I think there was an expansion of it in 2015, and I think I did vote against that. Yeah, so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now there's a third initiative that I signed.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with sanctuary state.
Yeah, right. So a lot of people don't know this, but Oregon's been a sanctuary state. Now we just celebrated our 30th anniversary of being a sanctuary state. And the word sanctuary doesn't really have any kind of hard definition in law or anything like that. It's kind of a word that refers to a state or a city that just has some favorable policies towards illegal aliens. And so the sanctuary law that we're trying to repeal is the 1987 law that says that no law enforcement agency, so that's your county sheriffs, your city police departments, or your state police, any law enforcement agency in Oregon isn't allowed to use any resources to apprehend someone whose only crime is that they're an illegal alien. And so we have the case of Sergio Martinez in Portland, which has been in the news. I think it was on the cover of the Oregonian just last week, where he was in the custody of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department, and the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement put a detainer on him, which is essentially telling the sheriff, says, when you're done with him, we want him. The federal government, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, wants him when they're done with him. And the sheriff said, no, because of state law, we can't do that, and we're not going to cooperate with you. And they let him go. And after they let him go, he raped a 63-year-old woman and assaulted another woman. And so that's the kind of thing where we have the sheriff is hiding behind a law like that. And I think we need to.
Because the law itself, you know, because I read the law when I doesn't really authorize the sheriff to do that. You know, it says you're just not going to be going checking people for immigration if there's nothing else.
I think that was the intent of the law in 1987, and,
yeah,
and
but that's
again,
not the intent of the law.
That was before my time, and so I think it was about racial profiling,
yeah.
And so I think that's what was going on there, and so it wasn't about cooperating with ICE, and so. There, you know, the Oregonian article had it, and it was kind of a little point-counterpoint. There's two different kind of legal theories on there. Some of them agreeing with Sheriff Mike Reese in Multnomah County, and some of them disagreeing about whether the law says that he can't turn someone over to ICE. And so there's a solution to the legal argument, which is to repeal the law.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do here. So, and I think we have a very good start on our collecting signatures. We had a good time at the state fair. I think I don't know any official numbers, but it was my sense that the attendance was a little bit down at the state fair, maybe due to the heat and maybe due to the smokiness the last few days. But we did very well collecting signatures on that, and so we got a very good start. We got another almost a year left to collect signatures, so we'll be working on that.
That brings up another issue. This time you're being allowed to actually collect signatures. In the past, you know, there was a Secretary of State and the Attorney General would put people on hold that were collecting signatures.
And that's been the policy. Is so when you do an initiative, what you do is you kind of, for lack of a better term, you write your own ballot title, and then you collect 1,000 signatures under that. You write your own ballot title; it gets approved by the Secretary of State, and then you start collecting under that. So you collect between 1,000 and 2,000 signatures, and you turn those in, and then the process starts for the crafting of an actual usable ballot title that you'll actually run under, and. And I think what's happened over time is that people who disagree with the content of the initiative file lawsuits to try to gum up the works, to try to cost you the time that it takes to gather signatures there, and so that's been what's gone on. And so so like right now under the old procedures, we wouldn't be able to gather signatures. We'd have to still wait until we get our true ballot title. So we would have missed out on a whole bunch of county fairs. We would have missed out on the state fair. And it would have cost us a lot of time in our thing, and not just the amount of time, but time during critical times when there's summer events going on that are good for gathering signatures at. And so the Secretary of State is kind of saying, look, these people like our organization are grassroots organizations, and they need to not be shut down like that. So he's just trying to make it available to do that. And I think that's fine. And it's legitimate to have disagreements over what the ballot title should be, and it's okay that there's lawsuits that go on with that. I get that, but to do it for shutting down the ability to gather signatures, that's a pretty hard thing. So I think the average time that a ballot initiative has lawsuits is out of commission for lawsuits. I think I read 6 months somewhere or something like that. Well, if you think you only have a 2-year window to do that, so that means on the average that they're robbing you of a quarter of your time. And if it's something very controversial, they'll rob you of even more of your time. So that when it's controversial. So I think that's a problem, and so I'm very happy that the Secretary of State did that. I think our initiative petition to repeal the sanctuary state will be the test case on that. I think that the Secretary of State's going to face some lawsuits and have to defend his decision. I hope he prevails.
Now, from what I understand, it's the legislature, or at least one of the legislators, that is actually challenging him, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think I saw, and I just know from just what I've read in the media, so it's Representative Dan Rayfield from Corvallis, and then Representative Phil Barnhart from Lane County, both of Eugene and Lane County. So they've said things in the media that are against us. They're not the ones that are actually making the challenge. I think they're just commenting in the media. I was sent a letter. I'm one of the chief petitioners on that one, so I sent a letter from former State Representative Ben Unger, and he pretty much told us that it was his legal advice to us that we need to stop gathering signatures, that there was going to be a lawsuit. So he's threatening us with a lawsuit. So anyway, that's what we're up against. So we'll see how it comes out.
Did he say on what grounds?
Yeah, so to argue the other side's point is what they're saying is that we shouldn't be out there collecting signatures under a ballot title that we wrote that's not going to be the official ballot title. And I think, first of all, that there's not a very good explanation of what it is on the page that comes from the Secretary of State anyway. So I think the circulator is going to have to explain the initiative or whatever, or you can turn it over and there's stuff on the back. You can read about it yourself there. But so on the one hand, they're right. You're not signing with the official ballot title before you there.
But it's probably a more honest one than the Attorney General will give you.
Well, yeah. well, I would say so, but then I'm the chief petitioner, so I wrote it. So that you could go the other way too and game the system that way. And I think that back in the 70s and 80s there was a problem with that too, is everybody would write their own ballot title and it was the puppies and kittens, proposal, and then there was no procedure for the Attorney General or anything to write the ballot title. So now we're on the other end of it, and I think the ridiculous one was we had one to make English the official language of the state of Oregon, and we got just a horribly unintelligible ballot title from the Attorney General. We sued her in the Supreme Court and won, and they actually remanded it to her. They said, no, this is not intelligible. You need to start over and do it again. And what they're trying to do is they're just trying to keep our proposals from being successful. So, I think it's a sad partisan thing. These are all Democrats. Ben Unger and Dan Rayfield and Phil Barnhart and Ellen Rosenblum, who's the Attorney General. These are all Democrats, and I don't want to be too partisan, but they started it. Whatever. But these are all people. They're Democrats. They own the House. They own the Senate. They own the governor. They own the Attorney General. They own not the Secretary of State right now, and they own all the courts and everything like that. All the courts are appointees from Kulongoski and Kitzhaber and Brown. They're all they're all appointed by Democrats. So they own the whole show. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep the citizens from exercising their constitutional right to do a referendum, to veto an act of the legislature, or to propose a new law as we do an initiative. So I don't know. It's a pretty over the top, heavy-handed thing for a party that owns everything to do. They can pass whatever laws they want. I mean, I guess we have one vote. We can let them not pass new taxes, but other than that, they can pass whatever laws they want. Or if we pass an initiative, they can go strike it down the next term. So it's pretty heavy-handed for them to be doing what they're doing.
So, on the again, tell us how, like, if somebody wants to help you with the gun control bill, explain that again and tell how they can.
Yep. So that one, we need to act fast. We have less than a month now to go before we have to turn in signatures. And so if they go to www.repeal719.com and go there, and several things they can do there. You can download a single signer petition, and you can fill that out and print it out and fill it out and send it back to us, and that will be a great help. Or they can donate money. A little bit of money goes a long ways, so we always appreciate that. And there's other ways that they can volunteer to help. So that's a great way to get involved in.
And that's what, 719?
719, yeah.
And that did what again?
That's the extreme risk protection order there. Yeah. So that allows a family member or a police officer to make a determination that a person is a danger to themselves or others, and make a petition to a judge to issue an extreme risk protection order, which would say that the person has to give up all their firearms, I think firearms or deadly weapons, in the next 24 hours. So that's.
And from what I understand, they're kind of vague on what constitutes a family member.
They have actually a list of things in there, so I think they're pretty specific on it. And honestly, I don't have the whole list memorized. Yeah. One of them is intimate partner, and so that would be I don't know. So is that my ex-girlfriend? And yeah. how ex is it? Is it a month ago? Is it a week ago? Is it 2 years ago? Is it 3 months ago? So that's one thing. Another one is they define some of them in terms of just the family relationship, right? Like a sister or brother or something like that. So that could be somebody who lives halfway across the United States or something, and just files that complaint or something. So that
you're having an argument with him or her on the Facebook, and next thing you know, they're coming to take your gun.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That could happen. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the second one was
requiring
U.S. citizenship.
Yeah, requiring
to vote.
Proof of citizenship to vote. Yeah.
That's what number?
That's IP number 5 there.
IP
and,
number
and
5.
that one's not due until next summer, so we have early
little more
next summer.
time.
Yeah, so we have a little bit more time on that one. That one's it's a constitutional change. It actually makes changes to the Oregon Constitution, and so because of that, it requires more signatures. It requires about 118,000 signatures there. So that's going to be a pretty high bar for us to scale on that one. So that's a lot of signatures to gather.
And so 118,000 means you really need about 130,000.
Yeah, so, you know, initiative gatherers have talked about that, the buffer that you need because of how many they're going to throw out. But we kind of have a little bit of a new wrinkle now because we have a Secretary of State who I think, rather than take a kind of a negative, let's see where we can find any kind of deficiency in the signature or anything like that attitude, and let's see how many we can throw out. I think he's going to have a better kind of a different look at it, where he's going to say, is this person an actual registered voter in the state of Oregon, and did they intend to sign this petition? And I think you're going to see a lot more signatures qualifying. I know when we did when we qualified for Initiative Petition 22 for the Sanctuary Cities one, at first we were short of the 1,000 that we needed to qualify for the sponsorship phase, and it's my understanding that they went and re-looked at some of them and were able to qualify them. Some of the ones that they weren't able to qualify, were able to qualify them. So it might be that the buffer is not such a big deal. Now, that being said, there'll be some that will just be plain old invalid, or somebody who's not registered to vote and they thought they were, or something. And so,
Or they forget, they put down the wrong zip code or something.
no, so that's where I think where I think that you're not going to get that thrown out.
Yeah.
So I think that really what it should take to sign that petition there is just a signature and a date. That's all you really need. Now, for most people, I know for me, if you just have my signature, that's not all that much help because it's not that readable there. So if you have a signature, a date, and a printed name, that should be enough to qualify, as long as there's not two Michael Neermans in the state or whatever. And then
We're in the same city.
right, and then whatever part of the address there, they can verify on whatever part of that address. And if I forgot the zip code, I just don't think that should be disqualifying. And I think that this Secretary of State's not gonna hold such a tight standard on that. I don't think they would do that to a ballot. If you were voting and your ballot came into the county elections office, I don't think they would hold you to such a tight standard on that. Oh, you didn't fill in the oval as quietly there, or something like that. I think they do things to enhance those ballots. So, yeah.
Okay, so if somebody wants to help you with that initiative, how would they?
Which one? The 22, the Sanctuary State one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to OregonIR.org, then that's State of Oregon, OregonIR.org. That will you go there and you can see where it's a Stop Oregon Sanctuaries initiative there.
Yeah. So is that they can download a thing and sign it?
Same thing. Yep. You can download a petition and fill it out and send it in. Yep.
Okay. Well, we've got about a minute and a half left. Is there anything else you want to tell our viewers before we?
Well, so the Extreme Risk Protection Order, I think it has several constitutional issues with it that are kind of things that need to be thought about seriously. If we're not able to repeal it or veto it through the referendum process, I think there might be some legal challenges to it. So one of them, of course, is on the Second Amendment grounds, and no right is absolute, but I think this kind of is an infringement on Second Amendment rights there. So you have somebody who hasn't committed a crime, and they're being deprived of their right to bear arms. I think I've heard there's criticisms of it just based on property rights, that this is their property, and to deprive some of their property without due process is an issue there. Again, this is somebody who hasn't committed a crime. It's kind of the thought police coming in there. So there's a 14th Amendment due process issue there. And then with the Oregon Constitution, obviously it's a similar violation of Article 1, Section 27, which is the Oregon Constitution right to bear arms thing, which is stronger than even the U.S. Constitution one. Anyway, so it's got some constitutional issues.
Okay. I think we're 7 seconds, so I guess we can shut down for, thanks for coming on and talking. And for the gun bill, you need to hurry up and get involved right now because it is under a time limit. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on.